Tonight, your headlines from Fewladelphia. The mayor has been accused of denying the region basic human rights after the Education Department revealed that 600 pupils were left without an elementary school place. Concern and speculation is rising across the region after citizens woke up today to different coloured cliffs. The cause is still under investigation. And finally, widespread celebrations are to be had later as the mayor, who was previously accused of living in the Stone Age, finally provides internet connectivity to the region. Stay tuned for more and hit that thumbs up to keep up with the latest. Hello everybody and welcome back to Fewladelphia, where today we're going to be working on this little space over here, which is glaringly undeveloped compared to the rest of the city. So we'll be coming back to that in just a moment. But before that, there's a few little things that I want to fix. And the first one is if we take a little look at education, we have come up short on elementary school places. So we've got 9,300 at the moment, we need 9,900, so we're, about 600 places out. Now, the only place that I really can add an extension wing, and so this one is 500 places, which will get us pretty much almost the way there, is on our Paul Raymond High School, like that. So we already have it on the elementary school there. That's the high school. Yeah, so this is the only place with the extension wing. I don't think we really need the extra gym extension over here. We're already maxed out over in FewCandy. And then we have got, of course, a load of other elementary schools, but they've already got the extension wings on, these two at least here. We also have the small one over here. I'm kind of reluctant to add anything to this because we've detailed that up so nicely. We do have the Atkinson Elementary here, where we could add more classrooms in the back corner over here, but again, it would ruin our lovely little playground and basketball detailing area, so I'm kind of reluctant to do that. We're only going to be 100 behind after adding in that extension, so I think that's not too bad for the moment. But the other thing I do want to look at is communications, because I've really fallen short on this actually. So if we take a little look at our info view here, you can see we only have one radio tower, which is over here in Gaudy Bay, and the rest of the city is completely neglected. And we can see that here in our happiness score, where unreliable internet service is now at -1. They're loving the mail service still, and there's abundance of entertainment, so that's wonderful news. They just don't like that their homes are small and their internet service is unreliable, so I think we can fix a couple of those things. So we haven't unlocked any of the extra telecom towers. We're actually racking up the progression points here as well. So once we come out to do, or start doing at least the downtown area over here, we're going to be needing to use a load of those for things like tourist attractions, larger roads, all the big, large police and administration buildings and the fire station, hospitals, that sort of thing. But for the moment, I think we can stick with the smaller radio towers rather than going to a ginormous one. Although, because we've got so many points, let's actually unlock it, because it's not going to hurt us to use a few points to do that, and then we can actually see what the coverage is like. Wow! Oh my goodness, that is quite the difference, really, isn't it? So we could actually, in actual fact, have only one of these communication towers in the middle here at 12,500 a month versus having multiple, and we're going to need at least one, which doesn't really fully cover that area, one over here. So we're going to need 3 of those, which is going to be 15,000 a month, providing, what's that, 9,000 gigabytes. So this is a much better deal. A much, much, much better deal. So I think we go ahead and actually add one in the centre of Fewhaven here, which is going to cover pretty much this entire area really nicely. Now I do just want to check actually if we go over to our existing radio tower. Yeah, there are employees, so the wages is going to rack up as quite expensive. I don't think if we add on upgrades to here, it's really going to make that much of a difference, not like adding in the larger radio tower. So I'm going to say we're going to go for it. At the moment, we're making 17,000, so I think this will be okay. And there is this little spot in the middle of Fewhaven here. Maybe this Mazda's a little bit big for this area, but it's kind of an empty spot, which just has the railway running through it, which I feel like would be a good place for it. If we take a look at alternatives, we of course do have this hillside on top of the farm here, which in actual fact would cover our area pretty well, although the green section is only really that farmyard area, which I'm not sure if they necessarily need the best internet that money can buy you. Or we could go up onto the hillside over here. That's the other option, which is a little bit more central to the area we've already made here. So that could be good. If we come out of the info view, I feel like this is probably a bit more of an appropriate place than my original thought, which was to put it here. I mean, the smaller radio tower could go there, and it wouldn't look too ridiculous, but the larger one, I definitely think is going to be better suited up here. So let's go ahead and place this in. And there's a bit of a flat spot right there for it, so I think that that will work nicely. And then we can just loop it up with a bit of a gravel road here. And if we take a little look, we have got 30 employees, so actually it is costing us not 12.5 grand, but 84,000 a month to run it. Which is okay. We've got the budget there, so I think, yeah, we've dropped down to 10,000 a month, 9,000 a month. It's dropping fairly rapidly. We'll keep an eye on that. It might be that we actually have to lower the budget for communications, which is sat on 100% at the moment, but I'm kind of reluctant to because people are very happy with our very reliable mail service. So I want to keep that up, and obviously the communications budget is going to impact both of those things, so mail and internet connectivity. So just before we move on, I want to point out a couple of little things that I have done off camera. And so the first one is a couple of residential extensions, particularly around this area, which I felt like when I looked at it, it looked really unnatural because it was just framed by this road, if I can highlight it. Yeah, going all the way around this area, and it looked kind of just a bit boring. So what I have done is extended it up here, kind of keeping it in the valley to the same approach, but going up this hillside with a nice mix of plopped houses in here, a couple of little playgrounds. It's not highly detailed, so you haven't missed out on anything, but it's just a few more residences in this area. And then we also have this little space as well, which was glaringly bare at the bottom of the Paul Raymond High School. So we've used some of the new US Southwest pack assets, which are absolutely amazing. If you haven't downloaded that asset pack yet from PDX Mods, do so right now because, oh yes, lovely, lovely assets in that pack. Not just the low density residential, I would add as well. And then we've also got this very small little area over here, which just this bit that kind of finished at this square road end looked very unnatural again to me. So I've just filled that out with a little bit more low density housing. And the other big difference that you may notice here as well is the map theme. So I've actually experimented with map theme replacer mod to change up the cliff and the dirt textures. So what I have used, you can see here, I've used the Lapland map theme for dirt and the cliff texture for Home of Chameleon. And this is actually as Geifs, the map maker, intended it to be. However, they also had the Cora map theme for the grass diffuse and the grass normal. Now, I'm unsure about this at the moment, which is why I've left it off. But let me know what you think. Should we keep to this map theme? Or did you prefer the default? I'm actually really enjoying the cliff texture like this. So I think if we fly over to Hoskins Castle, for example, it feels a lot more natural with that cliff texture. But I do worry that this grass is just a little bit spotty, a little bit too detailed, which is why I have left it on default just for the moment. But this also seems way too a luminous green, so I'm unsure. Let me know what you think in the comments below. But I'm really, really loving actually having a differing cliff texture in here. And you can see as we go over to the Gaudy Bay hillside, this is now what it looks like rather than those sandy cliffs, which probably weren't as in keeping when we have quite a few spruce and pine trees and things like that about the map. So yeah, bit of a different map theme. But anyway, let's come on to building out this area. And of course, I've cleared out the trees so that we're not building on top of it. So when I was trying to decide what to put in here, I was having a little look at map demands and things like that. And we actually, just a moment ago, we didn't have any low density residential demand, which has suddenly popped back up, which is really interesting. So that is flickering in and out. Obviously, I did add quite a bit of low density off camera, so that might be impacting it. But the demand guide is not really giving us an idea of what we need to build in the city because it's just max demand on everything. So if we come in and have a little look at the population tab, at the moment we're at 21.5% unemployed, which I feel like is a bit too high. Ideally, I'd like to get this around to 10%, but we're probably not going to do that in this episode today. But I do want to work on reducing that just a little bit. And that made me think, what can we put here? Now, I know I mentioned this in the episode where we put in these fake farm fields over here, that we were going to add some farms to make sure that we had the idea that there were actual farmers living in this area that could tend to these agricultural fields. So we will be doing that in this area as well, but that doesn't bring in a huge amount of jobs. So it got me having a little look at our production tab and what we were making and what we could possibly do maybe from a unique factory point of view. And I noticed obviously we're making a huge amount of plastics, but not only that, also minerals. And there is a unique factory which is called Switch On, which takes both of these products and turns it into electronics. So that is the one that I think that we should put in this space. It's going to give us a huge number of jobs. It's going to take materials that we already have being produced in the city in quite large excesses and turn it into something even better. So I think for the city as a whole, this is a great development to have. And I also think this space is pretty perfect for it, not only because we have flat land big enough to fit a ginormous factory, but we also have this little commercial district here, and we don't have much residential. If we were to place it in here, it's not going to be impeding on anyone's living standards, because actually the nearest residences kind of start round about here and across this other side of the railway, so they're far enough away that I don't think it would be an impact to the well-being of people around here. So I think it would be a fair development for the city to include in this space. And then of course aesthetically we also have the idea that we're going to have a ginormous factory up against our highway here, which I always appreciate aesthetically. Now in terms of orientation, I do think we should actually put the front of it facing this way, mainly because that advertising billboard is pointing out towards the highway, so that's going to give them a lot more benefit than having it placing towards the farmland and the hills the other side where really no one's going to see it. And it also means as well, because it's up a tiny slope here, people will also see those advertising signs for the company from this commercial area, which I think is a kind of important consideration when a company such as this is making such a large factory in this area. So yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to place it in as close as we can to the opposite side of the road to our commercial district without impeding too much on that hillside. And we're going to plop it in quite close up to the highway as well, but we'll give it its own road connection, of course. It's not going to be looped directly onto the highway road. That would be completely inappropriate. So let's try and get it as level as possible. We'll drop it in around about there. And I'm going to grab just an alleyway road just to frame the front of it here up against the highway road, which also gives us a really nice frontage road opportunity, which is always a nice thing, I think. But the other thing is, when looking at this factory as well, is if we come to the back side of it, we have this large entrance here, which looks like the main staff entrance, really, to me. We've also got a smaller one over there. So I feel like we need a road or something coming up the back, which is probably where people will get dropped off from the bus, potentially with a larger car park at the rear of it as well, because we've only got a small car park out the front here, and maybe workers could go in the back entrance. And then we can add some more industry around it to pad it out on either side to make it feel like a slightly larger complex. But we absolutely need a road connection to make this back entrance seem worth it. So I'm actually going to put the main road running up the back end of the factory like this. And then because we're needing plastics and minerals, we're making electronics, we've got a lot of goods coming in and out of this area, I think connecting it up to this collector here where it can have direct access onto the highway to take the goods around the city is going to be really important as well. That gives us a pretty solid connection here, but I'm kind of reluctant to keep the traffic lights on this junction, so let's go ahead and remove those. Let's also use Move It here to just make this a little bit nicer, ultimately. So if we click on this node, let's grab our connectors adjustment and let's just drag that back just a tiny bit so it's a little bit more square. And we could also do it here as well, just to help the sharpness of that corner coming round the bend this way to turn off in this direction. Now we could use a stop sign here too, so I'm thinking probably from here, just so that they're yielding to that main collector road at that point. I think that's going to be needed, but that gives us a direct connection onto the highway. And then I do just want to connect up this entrance. This is kind of going round to the main delivery entrance, which I think is quite an important place. So let's have a double connection here so that traffic from either direction can easily turn into the complex rather than having these slightly sharper turns. And then we can use the lane connectors tool. So actually that one's worked nicely here as well. If we remove these, then we can stop them from turning this way when coming out of the factory, so they have to go down this slip road to go in that direction. Same goes for here. If they're coming up here, they'd turn in through this road and not at this point. And then again, we can use move it to tidy up some of these junctions, but I do also think as well we want to remove some of the crossings. I feel like that's just huge overkill at this point. So let's get rid of a couple there and we can leave them on those points. And then just adjust up a little bit with move it. And that gives us a nice smooth connection down to the main entrance here, and also of course the deliveries entrance, which is down here. So I definitely think we want to expand on this with more industry either side, maybe create some sort of warehouses or smaller outbuildings for the factory complex and turn it into a larger area. But before we do that, I do want to add car parks, I think, down the back here, and I'm kind of not loving all of this green space. So I think we could add some car parks in here and get rid of some of that surface. We'll get rid of all of that surface, in fact, so let's remove that. We could just use some of the default parking lots in here, some of these long ones, to fill in a lot of that space. So like that, we'll need to obviously remove those trees. That's not a problem at all. So let's just move those up. I do also feel like they're slightly too far away from the road, so let's bring them in a little bit, and then we can fill up some of that with some more appropriate surface, I think. And then we can also go ahead and remove, I do just want to remove those two, I think, there, and we'll keep the rest of the decoration because that's not too bad. We could also facilitate a larger car park out this way as well, potentially, which I think we will do. So we'll drop just a standard car park in here rather than using the parking lot roads this time. And then I also want to make sure we've got a pedestrian crossing so people can cross here, and that has completely ruined our parking this side. I may switch these up for domes parking lots so that we can get them a little bit closer to the road without issue, but that'll do nicely for the moment. Now here, I want to go ahead and connect this up into this road here too, so that we've got connections both ways. So yeah, we can just drop that in here, and then of course this needs a massive amount of sorting out. So let's go ahead and do that as well. And there we go, that's a lot neater like that. So let's just have a little quick look at this. So we got 247 jobs. The other good thing about this building is it creates 2% industrial efficiency citywide and +1 college graduation chance citywide as well. So that's going to help us with education and industry in the long run. So I think this is a great thing to have. If we go and take a little look at unemployment, have we increased? Have we increased unemployment since I last looked? It does appear to be that way. Okay, it's fluctuating. Maybe I just haven't given it long enough. We'll check back on that a little bit later on. But again, just to quickly check in on our internet service, we are up to +2 now on reliable internet service. And budget-wise, because we put in this factory, it's giving us a huge amount of money. So it's boosted us right up to 27,000 an hour, up from the 10 or 9 even that we were on after we put in that radio tower. So that's a great thing. It's a great thing for the city. It's boosting our economy. It's giving us jobs. But if we take a little look at production, we want to check that we haven't kind of negatively impacted anything here either. And now, yeah, we are a massive electronics producer, obviously because of this factory. But it doesn't really look like our plastics surplus or our mineral surplus has really decreased that much. So maybe we'll give it a little bit of time and check back on that later. But overall, it's doing good things for the city so far, at least. So one of the things I was just looking at here as well is obviously the job positions. We have a lot of well-educated, mostly some highly educated and educated jobs within this factory. But if we have a little look at our education screen, of course we still have 35% of our population that is poorly educated. Oh dear. So I was debating whether we put in some offices around this, which look a little bit maybe more in keeping with the style of this factory, I suppose you could say. But on the basis of education, we are going to go ahead and put in some more industry around here. So we're going to find some suitable industrial manufacturing and warehouse buildings that we can add to kind of flesh out this complex. Maybe create a couple of sort of smaller factory units in this space in particular. And then we can kind of flow, I think, the farmlands on from this area up across this road, down into this valley, and maybe on up the hillsides a little bit afterwards. So we've got a few businesses in here now, and I just did notice that this one requires timber and this one requires timber to make paper. You may remember a few episodes ago we reduced the taxation on timber production, and yet it's still done absolutely nothing. So both of these factories are making something that we have ridiculous amounts of and requiring something that we make nothing of. Great. If there's any modders out there watching, if there is some way to decide what type of company goes into industrial buildings, that would be the most amazing thing for this game, frankly, honestly. Anyway, we'll move on from that. Let's move on to the farms. So I was having a look at what type of farms we actually needed the most. Now, because of our big FewCandy farms, we've got a lot of surplus in all farming industries here. But the one with the least is, kind of annoyingly, livestock. Now, you may have seen the headline from a few episodes ago. If we head back on over to FewCandy farms, they have been gradually ruined over time, I'll be honest. So I spent a long time doing things like this little alleyway here to incorporate the sub-buildings into the actual build rather than just floating in fields randomly. Again, like these greenhouses and the greenhouse yard at the back there. And now all of a sudden we have wonderful buildings just floating right in the middle of our fields. Absolutely blooming spectacular. So these are livestock here. You can see where I've incorporated the little sub-building in here, but not in here. Now we can get rid of them. So if I click on this farm here and we edit the area tool, we can just kind of edit it in like this and that building goes, but you'll see another one pops up. So it's kind of like it's a never-ending cycle. Oh no, and now we've got two. Wonderful. So yeah, it's super frustrating. Again, if there's any modders out there with a mod that can actually delete these sub-buildings, or if there is a way that I'm totally missing in Better Bulldozer, let me know. I'd be a very grateful FewCandy for that. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that I do want to avoid in our livestock fields over here. I really want that to stop that from happening. So I think how we're going to design the fields is in a way that it's going to be a little bit kind of weird. but we should still get the production out of it, and hopefully it will minimise the amount of buildings that are going to come in. So firstly, I am actually just going to extend this road so that we can put the farms nicely up against that. So let's go ahead and do this. Now, how I would like it, I think, is to extend up this valley area that we have here. And then I'm thinking maybe to loop it across the top of these hills round to join up with this one somehow. Probably using this kind of natural sort of valley flat point along there, coming down, and it's going to be very steep coming up here. But that's how we're going to do it, just so, again, it's kind of connected up at the end of it. And it's not just left as a road to nowhere, essentially. And then, yeah, we'll come back and tidy up the rest of that. But it does give us... Oh, yeah, we can actually convert this into a tunnel probably here. It might be high enough. I'll tidy that all up in the detailing time-lapse, but at least that kind of gives us a very local, very rural road, which extends between Atkinson, essentially, and the FewCandy farms. And then on into the town that we will be building out here at some point. And now that we've got that in, we can now place our farms up against this road and make sure that they look sort of orientated and nice. So let's grab our livestock farm to start off with. We'll turn contour lines on. I want to put the base of the farm kind of at the bottom of the hill here, and we'll turn it into a much larger farmyard. So I'll probably put in things like the big cow shed and that sort of thing. And then what I'm going to do is run up alongside this road here, right up to the edge of the boundary. And we're going to keep this really, really narrow in the hope that we don't get any of those buildings spawning in. And if we do, we can come through and adjust them. We're going to do the same thing over here as well. So I'm going to keep this section of it. And it doesn't really matter too much about angles at the moment. I'm going to keep this section really quite narrow. So something like that. Now, I know that looks so weird. And you're all thinking, what the hell is she doing? But we're going to use detailing tools, ultimately, to make this look sensible and to change it quite a bit. So if I just have a little look, we've got 4 employees in this field, which is not very much. So let's come through and edit the field. And I'm going to add in a few little extra points here. So we're going to add in a section where this comes up and try and make this area larger, because the number of employees directly relates to how big the actual field is. This is quite an important point. See, we have got a sneaky little building in there. I don't mind 1 or 2, and I wish they'd kind of pop up straight away, because at least then we can see them. Like here, we've got one as well. And then we can add the detailing in that's necessary to work with them. If we can't see them straight away, then it's very, very frustrating indeed. Like even here, we could even add in another point, which is going to run up to here. Because when I said that we're going to work detailing into this to make it look sensible, we're going to be covering it all up with surfaces. So none of this is really going to matter. Like we could even go like this, for example, and see how that works. Now we've still only got 7 employees, and we've still got a building coming in here. So this bit's obviously not narrow enough. Let's do it like that. So a few little adjustments needed to make sure that we don't get our buildings in that we don't want. We could even go something like this. It hasn't increased the employees at all. But there we go. We have got a farm in there with 7 employees. It's looking efficient. Hopefully we won't get any buildings coming in. And then if we go to surfaces, we can have a play around with covering this all up. So we can even get our vanilla agricultural surface here, because you'll see, like, if we start to fill in different bits with it, if I go like that, it all comes in different lines and it looks super, super, super weird. So we're not going to do that. We're going to run it across the whole farm. But we do have, as you know from previously, some different farm textures in here. So I think it would be quite nice to incorporate a lot of these as well. So let's turn off area bucket for starters. So then we can create fields like this over the top of our actual livestock farm. And then we can come through and just delete out that nasty fence so we can't see that. Now we can create our own fields around the farm like this, so we're just covering it all up essentially. So we could go even more nuts with this surface before I hide it and make it a little bit larger and get a few more people in, which I think I will do. But I think at the end of it, it will look really nice if we cover all of this nastiness up. We've still got a building in there, but we could, for this one, incorporate it actually into the farm. So that's fine if we know where they are. It's just if more suddenly appear, then it starts to look super, super, super weird. Now, like I mentioned, I do want to make more out of the farmyard as well. So if we come in here, we have got various different cattle sheds that we can add to this, which always look really super cool, I think. So for example here, I'd definitely like to have a cattle shed, I think, incorporated into the main farmyard. It's even got the like slurry pits in it and all that kind of thing. So yeah, we definitely want that in. And we could even incorporate more up this end as well, potentially, but I don't want to impact too much on the actual field because this is a place where we haven't actually got the working field underneath it. So we can add a few more buildings in here, definitely things like grain silos as well. So we've got our industrial decorations here too. A few silos around I think would be marvellous, like this could be a feed silo, for example, or something along those lines. So we can incorporate this into our yard here. Definitely a grain silo, absolutely needed. So let's have maybe a couple of these in, like that, side by side. And then we can start to flesh out a big proper farmyard field over here. Obviously this surface now needs to move, so let's adjust this so it goes around our cattle shed rather than through it. So yeah, we can go nuts on a bit of farmyard detailing out here. I'll try and get rid of that. We might expand out this field out here to detail it up. But that should give us a farm at least, which is going to operate a lot of the agricultural fields out here. I think we could probably have a second one though. So yeah, like I mentioned, we're definitely going to have trees up against here, but we could have a smaller farmyard in this place. And what I might do for this is actually go the opposite. So let's add this in here. We've actually finally technically unlocked the dairy house. That's wonderful news. Yeah, let's add this. I'm going to go right up to the highway here, right along these edges. And let's see what extractor buildings we get in and if we can incorporate it into the actual farmyard itself. If it looks super strange, then I will just get rid of it. We'll change it up and cover it up with regular surfaces. But that'll do for the moment. And I think this gives us a really interesting aesthetic as we come along the highway here. Like we've got the bridge. We've got farm fields on different sides as well. If we look in this direction, we go back to like the hay bale field and things up there. And then we come onto this big factory. And then you can look across Gaudy Bay and onto Fewhaven over here as well. So it's quite a nice little highway drive actually. Yes, see, we have got a massive cattle shed now right in the middle of the field, but we can incorporate this into the farmyard. So that's what we'll do there. And then that at least gives us two different farmyards here to operate a lot of this agricultural space, which I feel like is a lot more realistic. And so just before we move on to make this look realistic, sensible, and not a complete total mess by detailing, let's just have a little look at unemployment. So we're at 18.3%, so it has reduced a bit. It is kind of going down over time, I guess, with this factory, or even down to 80.2 just as I shut it there. So that's definitely helping. The farms are not really helping because there's hardly any employees in each of them, 7 and 5 respectively. But if you look at these industrial buildings, 52, 38... 54 employees, 60 even, so they're quite a lot more beneficial towards helping us reduce that unemployment rate than obviously the farmlands, although the farmlands are giving us rural resources, which in turn help the industry. So it's all one big happy family circle at the end of the day. But anyway, with that, let's go ahead and finish off our farmland, detail up our industry, and then we'll come back and have a look at stats and the finished build at the end. Okay, so there we have our farmland and our factories, and yeah, I think it's sitting in quite nicely. I really do enjoy this aesthetic up against the highway, where you kind of come through nothing really and then have this giant factory, and then you go on to farm fields as we come around here. So yeah, just starting off with the farm. So I did put in some cow spawners, but they seem to be walking miles away from where I dropped the spawner in, so they're now all over this field, rather than where I put the spawner, which was in this little paddock that I put down the back of this animal barn here. So yeah, that's a little bit interesting, but okay, it is what it is. We'll go with it. The cows have escaped the field. I mean, someone did leave the gate open, so maybe that makes sense. But there we go. So yeah, I've just integrated this into the farm yard by adding in our dirt road decals up to it, and then covering up some of that crop field with this paddock round the back, so it feels a little bit more natural. And then if we come on up to this farm, obviously the whole area I've completely covered with surfaces. I think if we go to trees, yeah, you can kind of see where the actual farmland is underneath. So I did extend it, so it's a lot bigger. We now have 15 jobs here instead of, I think it was 7 previously. But yeah, I love, love, love these farm surfaces. We've just added a whole bunch of decals around here, so a little gate in here as well, lots of farm machinery, a tiny bit of rubbish, but not too much, keeping the farmyard nice and clean, apart from the dirt everywhere. Got a milk truck here, taking away the cow's milk, is what I'm imagining at least. Then we come on here, again I've put in a tractor and a truck and things like that, and then we've got this crop field around the main farmyard here. I've also put in a few little dirt tracks like this one, running along the side here and down there. Across the field, it's a little bit shaded by the trees, also over here as well, and up the side a little bit there, just to make it kind of apparent that the trucks and the tractors I should say, can drive around the farm. Then of course we've come up here, we've got a bit of fencing in certain places like there, and then we come up here to this animal barn with a little grain silo, feed silo, whatever it might be, at the top here. So I think that sits in quite nicely. I did extend it on obviously round here and added in a few more fake fields. We've got some cow spawners over here. They're all kind of grouping up in this one, but there we go. So that's an animal field. And then we've got various crop fields, of course, around as well. Extended it a little bit into the valley up here, and then just added in a few more trees as we come round the corner and go up the hillside at the back there. So yeah, that was pretty much the farmyards. Nothing particularly spectacular to see here. What you've seen already in the FewK farmyards ultimately. And then we come across to our factory area, so the car park decals are of course disappearing. We'll just have to use a bit of Move It to fix that. Same goes for back here as well. Wonderful stuff. But yeah, I've just kind of customised these assets a little bit. So I added in another factory at the back here with a smaller one. So there's 2 here. And yeah, I have just noticed as well that there we go, their production things had disappeared. So let's just move those a little bit and they'll pop back in. But yeah, we've removed some fencing to make this one larger yard. We removed a couple of the assets from around it. Same goes for here as well. So we've removed a bit of fencing and kind of customised it into one space. And this is why I'm tending not to use the vanilla car parks, because they're just so annoying. The domed car parking works much, much, much better for keeping the actual car parking assets visible, I find. And you can see my fence has gone totally wonky here because I've moved these car parks around so much, but there we go. I did change up this car parking out the front, so there's a few more spaces now, and just use some of those smaller lots. We've got lots of people milling around the back of the factory, which is nice to see. Then we've got a big entrance in here to the Lecto Electronics factory. Really like that surface there. I think it makes it look quite smart and quite modern. And I had deleted this, but then of course, because I'm only using the single segment thing, it does pop back in as soon as I make any changes around it. So there we go. We do have the warehouses back here, which I've just created this kind of logistics yard, you could say, out the front with a couple of lorries, but mostly just trailers waiting for the lorry to come, and a little bit of storage out the back here. And then not really much at the front actually. That's all kind of stayed the same as it was. And then we come on down into this industry here, where again more just kind of decals and just shaping some of the plots a little bit better so they fit into the space a bit more seamlessly. But yeah, I love these 2 assets. There's so many props on them. They look really quite alive and nice. So yeah, very pleased with that. And also really pleased with how it looks over this overpass as well. Like, it feels busy and it feels like you're kind of going into the city from the countryside if you go the other way. So yeah, I think the dynamic of that is quite nice. I'm pretty pleased with it. So if we have a little look at what is happening here, this has actually increased the number of employees, so it's shot up to 317 now. And if we take a little look at unemployment, we're at 17.6, so it's not decreased that much, but it has gone down a bit at least, and it's heading in the right direction, so I'm kind of okay with that. From a money point of view, we're absolutely smashing it. So we were actually on 36,000 just before I started recording this segment. Oh, you can see it's popped up to 32 already. So we're making a lot of money, and I'm assuming that's coming from obviously this factory producing loads of goods for our city, which is wonderful to see. And then in terms of happiness as well, you can see here reliable internet service still on +2, so people are kind of happy enough, I guess, with it. At least it's not a negative to our happiness anymore. So the radio tower must be serving the city quite nicely. But yeah, there we go. So I think that's quite a nice organic transition away from the town. And you can see here, like the pops of colour. I mean, I definitely want to change up some of these farm fields so it's less of the vanilla brown colour and more of our kind of natural farm field colours. So we will do that at some point. But I do like the transition away from the city, and we've kind of got rid of the rigidity of this road being the boundary as well. Like that was kind of very solidly the boundary and there was nothing this other side. So really like seeing that that is now not the case and it feels much more organic. And we've still got so much room up here on the hillsides to expand and grow. I don't know, maybe we'll do a F1 track up here sometime. Not too sure. But yeah, I love how this road as well sinks into the valley as it goes round. Still need to tidy that up, but we'll be coming back to that area, I'm sure, at some point, but that just gives us a nice transition, as well as helping the unemployment rate. And then finally, just to show you education as well, so actually this hasn't popped up that much more, but this has come down, so we're actually kind of almost level. Almost everyone bar 87 people, is that, have got a place at elementary school. So that's a definite improvement from what it was at least. So for today, that is going to be it. If you have enjoyed the episode, likes, comments and shares are really greatly appreciated. If you really enjoyed my content, there's ways to support the channel in the comments below. But that is all from me for now, so thank you so much for tuning in. While you wait for new content, check out one of the videos on screen, and I'll catch you again next time. Bye bye!